The Pittsburgh Steelers had the weekend off, but we did not here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. We made sure to do some analysis here. My first question is one that we've seen fans talk about all through this 3-3 start to the season. Is Devin Bush a bust right now? I don't think so. I'm going to explain why right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, and we are free and available on all podcasting platforms. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's Monday here. Remember, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, also YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to like this video. Thank you so much to all those who do. It really helps us out. And if you're listening on Apple, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple, and you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Wanted to lead off this Monday talking about a few things in review because, bye week, it's a time to reflect. It's time to think about things. The Steelers are going to be doing that themselves, looking at film, looking at everything that they want to see here. But what we're doing here in Locked On Steelers, I went back and I was looking at more film, throughout the week, and it gave me some time to look a little bit harder at Devin Bush specifically because, of course, he's the highest drafted player in the Tomlin era of the Steelers organization. When you look at all their picks, he was picked 10th overall. They traded up to get him. He was supposed to signal a shift of the defense and being an X-factor guy in the middle of the field. Now, he started off looking like he was becoming that his rookie year. Then his second year, he was doing really well up until he towards ACL. Then he was out. Now, since he's been back, he's had some good moments, but he hasn't had the complete kind of play that everyone's expected. A few things here. First and foremost, people have to remember this kid is still a kid. All right. He's literally 23 years old and just turned 23 years old. So he's still a baby. There's a lot of college players that are going to be coming here that are older than him. But on top of that, I think that what people are looking at is the raw stats of him. And they're seeing, oh, wait a second, he doesn't have all the big plays. Right now he only has 25 total tackles, only 2 tackles for loss, and those are his two sacks. He only has 1 forced fumble. He only has 1 fumble recovery, even though that fumble recovery did close out the game against the Seahawks in overtime. He doesn't have a pass defense yet. He doesn't have an interception yet this year. So people are thinking, oh man, why? Where is Devin Bush? He's supposed to be all over the field making these plays. And I've talked about this on Twitter. If you've seen my Twitter handle @CarterCritiques, because this has been going on for weeks. Where if he's not the center of the attention, he's a problem. And I think that's very short-sighted analysis by anyone who looks at this team and says, oh yeah, Devin Bush stat line, he's not doing enough. It's not that simple. You have to remember of how this team is built and what he's been brought here to do. First and foremost, anyone that thinks that he's going to be Ray Lewis, if he's going to be, this big, penetrating force that just destroys everything in the middle of the field, that's not who Devin Bush was picked to be. He was picked to be the middle linebacker, the inside linebacker, that's going to be fast enough to go tackle to tackle and help in coverage. And despite not having an official pass defense, according to the official statistics, he has helped in coverage and a lot. People remember that interception that Terrell Edmunds had where Minkah Fitzpatrick tipped the ball. The reason the ball was thrown so high for him to tip the ball was because Devin Bush was running under his man. I look at Devin Bush and people say, oh, well, he misses a lot of tackles. Like, well, that might be some recency bias there because he hadn't missed a tackle for 3 games before the Seattle Seahawks game. And the only tackle he missed was 1 time against the Bills, where he had 7 tackles and was right up there with the rest of the team. Devin Bush is a lot bigger to this defense than people understand. Just by looking at the stats. You look at tape. There are times you think, man, he didn't do this here, he didn't do this here, but a lot of the times he was drafted to be a faster linebacker behind a dominant defensive front. The Steelers' defensive front, Cam Hayward's been dominant. TJ Watt's been dominant. Alex Highsmith, when he's been healthy, has been dominant. But we know that Chris Wormley, Isaiah Buggs, and the guys that have been filling in next to Cam Hayward in the middle have not been. And that's where a lot of the offensive linemen have been getting to the second level on Devin Bush, on Joe Schobert, who I also think is not having a bad year right now. There's a lot of people that want to be quick to be down on something with the Steelers, and I get it. That it's reactionary. It's what people do. They when the Steelers aren't playing well, when they're losing, they want to point somewhere. They got to point fingers. They got to point fingers and find something everywhere. I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm going to actually just watch the film, let the game come to me as an analyst, and be like, all right, this is what I actually see happening here. Are there plays that Devin Bush makes mistakes? Absolutely. There's plays that everybody makes mistakes. If you go back and look at what Devin White does for the Buccaneers, there's plenty of plays he makes mistakes. But the difference is that he's often had a healthy defense around him. They've had the guys up front keeping him clean, allowing him to process the plays. And remember, Devin Bush, same draft class. Devin White drafted just a few picks before Devin Bush, and there was a reason he was drafted before him. It's because he's bigger, he has the prototype build, and they see him as being that complete player. Devin Bush, though, is what's needed at linebacker in today's NFL. There's a lot of things that people don't understand with how fast running backs are, how quick passing is taking over the NFL. You need a guy like Devin Bush to be able to change direction and play the way that he does. But you also need multiple guys there. We're going to get to the rest of the defense in just a bit here. But first, I got to tell you guys about DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live and another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. You've got your neighbor's best friends login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings out your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again, and the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion, and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, keeping it rolling with you on a Monday. Remember, we thank you for being for making us your first listen in podcast every morning right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Steelers fans, we're going to address this defense a little bit more because, again, they're not elite right now. And I wrote about this last week for DKPittsburghSports.com as my Carter's Classroom film analysis. By the way, go subscribe to DKPittsburghSports.com. It's where I do a lot of my work when it comes to breaking down the film. We have a lot of great coverage there, so absolutely do check that out. But when you look at the Steelers defense, you're like, okay, you want to see this defense dominating. This team was built around the defense dominating, and the defense hasn't dominated all the games. They dominated the Bills. There's no doubt about that. They did the best job of defending the Bills that any team has done this season, and there's no way in the world that you can deny that. But when you look at what this team's been able to do, they're not the pressure team right now. The Steelers have led the NFL in sacks for 4 straight seasons, unprecedented in NFL history. That's in jeopardy right now. They only have 15 sacks. I believe that's 7th or 8th best in the NFL right now, with a lot of teams ahead of them. When it comes to pressures, they're a little bit higher. They're about 6th best in the NFL with 67 pressures. But they are doing really well because they're also not blitzing as much. They do have the highest pressure percentage of all, or the 3rd highest pressure percentage of all plays at 28.8% right now. I look at this and I say, man, I look at these things and I say, with the Steelers defense, what's actually going on here? They're not bad. There's some people that are out there saying, oh, the defense is bad, just like they're saying Devin Bush is bad. I'm like, let's apply some context here. For one good bit of these games, the Steelers have been missing several key players. Stephon Tuitt still hasn't played a single game here. And despite what people might say, oh, well, you deal with injuries as they come, to Stephon Tuitt he's a top 5 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. He had 11 sacks last year from that position, bringing pressure. And as good as Cam Hayward is, as great as Cam Hayward is, the two of them being a Batman and Batman combo. I wouldn't even call him Batman and Robin. It used to be Batman and Robin with Cam Hayward, and then Stephon Tuitt with the Robin. But now they're Batman and Batman, or Batman and Superman. when they're both healthy and they're rocking. And again, it's that combination up front that gives the Joe Schoberts, the Devin Bushes, those guys free reign to say, okay, what is the offense doing in the backfield? How can I make a play here? How can I use my speed, my agility, what the Steelers drafted before to go out there and shut things down? And he hasn't been there. Alex Highsmith has missed multiple games. TJ Watt has missed multiple games. Joe Hayden has missed a game. Devin Bush himself has been hurt. There's been a lot of things this defense has had to recover from, but still, you would hope that the Steelers at some point would be able to back things up. Now, when you look at when I'm looking at where they rank in the NFL, when it comes to passing yards, they're outside of the top 10. I believe they're like 14 or 15 right now. When it comes to total yards, they're also just outside the top 10. I believe they're 12 overall with 352. When it comes to rushing yards right now, hovering around that top 10 range. I believe they're 11 actually right now, allowing 107 yards per game. And points per game, they're also hovering just outside that top 10 range. So I look at that and I say, those aren't bad numbers. Those are actually good numbers. I mean, you're a good defense if you're hovering around the top 10 of the NFL. But this defense needs to be elite for the Steelers to win. If this defense is just good for the rest of the season, they're going 9-8, 8-9, somewhere around there. But I do think this Steelers defense can turn it around. A few reasons why. One, this pressure is starting to ramp back up. You saw Alex Highsmith Sunday Night Football against the Seahawks and what he was starting to do again. Remember, he's a second-year, third-round draft pick. It wasn't going to come to him automatically, just like it didn't come for the offensive line automatically. You see that offensive line growing this year and their progress from week 1 against Buffalo, where it was like, what are we doing here? And then you're looking at the Raiders and the Bengals games, you're like, man, this is rough. But then you saw what they did against the Packers, and like, okay, there's a semblance there. Then you saw what they did against the Broncos, and they bullied the Broncos. It was like, okay, that was pretty good. And then against the Seahawks, you saw another good performance. They're stacking good performances now. This defense needs to be able to do the same thing. And the only difference is that the defense has a lot higher pedigree players on it. You still got Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I talked about last week, I believe with Brooke Pryor, about him. He's not overrated. He's not washed. He's not playing badly. It's just teams aren't targeting him the way that they targeted him before. A lot of the targets, quote unquote, that he has are plays that are thrown underneath of him, and he has to come up and help on. And he's also been having to compensate for other guys being out and trying to help cover for other situations. He's had to help double guys in the slot because they weren't sure about Arthur Mollett. He's had to help cover guys with James Pierre because they weren't sure about him because he's given up a couple of deep balls this year. So now the Steelers might start to find more confidence in certain players. Expect you see Minkah Fitzpatrick more in that X factor role, less in the help. Let me provide backup to this guy over here and that guy over there. More about, hey, let me actually be a playmaker in the Steelers defense. And that's what these guys need to be allowed to be. They need to be allowed to be X factors. TJ Watt is an X factor. They're not going to have him try to cover for it, but they need him to be an X factor. Devin Bush needs to become an X factor. I think it's going to take him some time, but I do think he's going to get there. Right now, he just needs to be kept clean, allowed to kind of find his feet again after his ACL tear and figure things out this year. But I think he can be an X factor. Cam Hayward is an X factor. He's going to be there. If Stephon Tuitt can get back healthy this year, to answer your question, Steelers fans, I know you're asking, well, Chris, is Stephon healthy going to come back this year? We do not know. The Steelers are all mums the word. They don't have to say anything while he's on injured reserve. That's a part of the issue here, is that the Steelers are keeping everything very close to the chest. The only thing that we know about Stephon Tuitt's potential return is that about a week or two ago, he was seen on the Steelers practice field as photographed and put out there by the Steelers doing some jogging, doing some light drills. We cannot say if we've seen him in the practices. It's against the rules for the NFL, for those like myself who get credentialed to cover a Steelers practice, to be able to say, oh, yeah, I saw this week in practice, unless a player or a coach tells us that. And they're doing a very good job not letting that information out when we ask them. So we don't know if Stephon Tuitt is coming back. But even if he doesn't, you still got players like Alex Highsmith, like TJ Watt, like Devin Bush, who can be big-time players. Cam Hayward can still be up there. Melvin Ingram, don't forget. I know Ian Rappaport released a report that Melvin Ingram might be traded. I think that's pure poppycock. He would not be traded. This team needs that healthy rotation of edge rushers, and they know it, and that's what he signed on here to do. So don't buy into that. But you need to see James Pierre emerge as a true, reliable third option at cornerback, not just a guy that fills in and you hope for the best, but a guy that allows Cam Sutton to be that versatile player that lines up at outside corner, slot corner, safety, dime backer, all the different positions. And then you still have guys like that are role players, like Terrell Edmunds, like Joe Schobert, like Trey Norwood, who's come on very strong for this defense. He's one of the best graded dime backers in the NFL right now. Had 3 really good plays against the Seahawks. A stuff on third down where he tackled DK Metcalf in open space. Had another good tackle in open space on a third down, and then a third down breakup. Trey Norwood playing well, 7th round rookie, role player. You don't need him to be X factor, but play your role. When you're put in a spot, win your assignment. You don't have to win your assignment and do the amazing thing. That's what Minkah Fitzpatrick does. That's what TJ Watt does. That's what Cam Hayward does. But guys like Terrell Edmunds, Trey Norwood, Joe Schobert, even James Pierre, really, do just kind of be in position. Don't get beat out of the spot that you're assigned to be in. And if the play comes to you, make the play then, but don't force anything. And I think that's been part of the problem, is that the Steelers defense, you have to learn when you're a playmaking defense and when you're expected to be a playmaking defense, there's added pressure there because you're sitting there saying, look, we know the offense is not designed to get 30 points a game. This isn't the days of Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger in his prime and Heath Miller and a top 5 offensive line. Those days are long gone. So this team knows that the defense has to get turnovers. And sometimes, and TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick have both talked to us about this, sometimes that puts pressure on defenses to force plays. They start doing things that are outside of themselves. And when I say outside of themselves, it means you start to do things that are outside of your assignment and kind of trying to do extra, techniques or extra moves or do things to try to help someone else. And in doing so, you forget, hey, this was the whole reason this play was drawn up, was to create this matchup situation that's not about just me. It's about the entire team. And some players forget about that when they're trying to be X factor guys. That's been my issue with the Steelers, is that they've been doing that too much on defense. I think that the bye week is going to give them time to settle down on that. They face a tough challenge in the Cleveland Browns. Even with all the injuries they're suffering, you got to come into this game, take them serious, win this game on the road. I think it's going to be a big test to show how much more soundly they can play on defense. But we have a lot more to go over. We're going to talk a little bit of offense in this show. First, I got to tell you guys about Get Upside. Hey, Steelers fans, this is Chris Carter with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents per gallon on every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store and Google Play right now. Use promo code Touchdown and get a bonus of 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code Touchdown. That's TOUCHDOWN Touchdown to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back is added right to your account. You can cash out at any time by going to your bank account, PayPal, e-gift card for Amazon, or other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app today and get your promo code to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Again, that's promo code Touchdown to get 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. And we're also brought to you by Built Bar. If you want to help treat that tastes like a candy bar, Built Bar is the ultimate protein bar for you. It's the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team, and it comes in so many different flavors. Whether you want a fruity snack like raspberry, strawberry, or orange, or something different like salted caramel, cookies and cream, Rocky Road, or my personal favorite, double chocolate, Built Bar has so many flavors for you to enjoy. And the best part, they're all healthy. They range from 130 to 180 calories. They pack 17 to 18 grams of protein. They only have 4 to 5 grams of sugar and only have 45 grams of net carbs. That's a tasty and healthy snack that'll save you from eating the snack you'll regret later and helps anyone stay on task with their diet. Order today and get your favorite flavor delivered right to your door by going to Built.com. That's promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com, and you'll get 15% off your next order at Built.com. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, all capital letters, all one word, for 15% off at Built.com. And wrapping things up here, we're keeping it rolling here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got to talk about the offense. I just spent 2 whole segments talking about the defense. We got to look at the offense. Now, the biggest thing that this offense has going for it right now is that Najee Harris and the offensive line are figuring things out. Najee Harris started off the season, looking really impressive, but not really getting the chance to shine because the Steelers' offensive line just wasn't giving him too many opportunities. But when you look at what he's been allowed to do, when he's been given more carries and more holes to run through, you've seen him improve. In the first 3 games, playing the Bills, the Raiders, and the Bengals, against the Bills, even with that being a good win for the Steelers and the best win for the Steelers they've had this season, he averaged 2.8 yards per carry, 16 carries, 45 yards. Everyone's like, what's that about? That's not what the run game's supposed to be. Then the Raiders game, 10 carries, 38 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. Yeah, that's not too much. For Bengals game, 14 carries, 40 yards, same thing, 2.8 yards per carry. Not good. Since then, he has done, you've seen him do much better. Averaged over 4 yards per carry against the Packers, averaged over 5 yards per carry against the Broncos, getting his first over 100-yard rushing game with 122 total, and then averaged around 3.3, not great, but a solid day against the Seahawks. Now, and that was also a game with the Seahawks you could see were just flowing to wherever he was going. They were going to that was what opened up the Deontay Johnson jet sweep. That's what opened up the Eric Ebron jet sweep that got him into the end zone. But this is what I'm looking at with the run game is building here. You're seeing the offensive line start to gel more. When if you want to watch tape yourself, you want to go back on Game Pass, or you have a game saved on your DVR that you want to look back at, or you see something on NFL Network. Watching these later games, how the line is combining their blocks, because early on you saw oftentimes, let's say, picking on two guys, Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson, the center and the left guard. Kendrick Green would block a guy, but then let a guy go too early. Kevin Dotson wouldn't know when he was letting that guy go, and that would lead to him that guy blowing up a play. That happened on multiple occasions. Trey Turner, same thing with Kendrick Green. Just sometimes that he does something. Kendrick Green was supposed to either not let a guy go, or he was supposed to get a certain guy, and then Trey Turner is then dealing with two guys that he's supposed to, and that's going to cause more problems there. The same thing goes to the offensive tackles. You see times where they're just not too sure when they're firing off, and that's the big thing here. Oftentimes when I talk to coaches at pro and college football and high school football, because I cover the high school football for Skylights with Jenna Harner on Fridays at Channel 11 WPXI in Pittsburgh, the NBC affiliate here. But when we talk to coaches, they all want you playing fast. They don't want you thinking at the ball. And I think that's a lot of what's been happening with this offensive line. You look at the hesitancy, Kendrick Green not really knowing where to go in the moment. He may know what the play looks like. He may know what the play call is and the name of the play call is, but knowing how to react physically in the moment when there's 300-pound guys right in front of you and 250-pound guys behind them moving at the speed of light, that is a lot to process. And when you're still getting used to the NFL, that's what people say when the game is too fast or the rookies have to adjust to the game. That's why it's so hard to do that. That's why they don't allow high schoolers just to go from high school to the NFL. It's just it's too much, and even college players it can be too much. But this is what I'm seeing in these last three games. You've seen Najee Harris get over 4 yards a carry, get over 5 yards a carry. I've seen them start to be able to say, you know what, this is our assignment. We're going at it. We're not questioning anything. We're going forward and getting it right. And it's cool to do that and get it wrong sometimes. Sometimes you get it wrong, it can cost you big because then you're doing it. So sometimes you're a little more cautious. But that's the balance that they're dealing with right now. This run game is dealing with, okay, knowing in this situation, we call this type of run play, this kind of power run play, which I think that Matt Canada is finally calling more for these guys. And it says, hey, we're not thinking about who we're hitting. We're just going and hitting. And that's what they've said all off season long. You heard it right here on this podcast, all throughout the spring, all throughout the summer. You wanted to, they talk about being a more physical group, being more aggressive, setting the tone, being the guys that they're becoming the bullies of the against the defense. And they've only done that really against the Broncos. I think that was the real, that was the real time that they really showed up like that. But they now know what it's like to be the bully. That's the biggest thing for this offense. If they can, if the offensive line can figure this out, and again, they don't have to be the number one rushing offense in the NFL. They have to be a top 10 rushing offense in the NFL. If they can get to the point where they're, middle of the road, ranked 16, ranked 15, like right around there, this offense is going to be fine. It's going to open up more play action opportunities, more jet sweep opportunities, more of the things that Matt Canada likes to base things off of. Matt Canada is a coordinator that likes to create mismatches, but to create a mismatch, you have to have matchups that you like in the first place. And the Steelers haven't had too many of those because Ben Roethlisberger has been good this year. Najee Harris has still been working to figure out what it's like to run behind this offensive line. There hasn't been that thing that offense or defenses when they face the Steelers say, we have to stop that because if we don't, that will kill us. And with the run game, maybe there's something there that they can start to build off moving forward. We're going to keep breaking this down. We got Tony Serino tomorrow on for a Tony Tuesday, breaking things down right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. We appreciate all those who support us and want to help us out here, the Locked On Steelers podcast. If you want to support us, like the video on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That really helps us out. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Thanks to all those who do that. Check me out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast Monday through Friday. We're going to be keeping it real with you all week long, getting you ready for a big game against the Cleveland Browns this Sunday.